So Johnny Ralph, amongst other sources, is going with the story that Gold Coast could be willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Richmond's Daniel Rioli. And like most fans, I am fully in the camp of, if this does come across Richmond's desk, they should drive him to the airport with a thank you and a promise that he will be a Tiger for life, being one of their modern premiership stars. But this isn't as bad a deal as people think for Gold Coast. It's an overpaid win-win. How is this possible? Let's talk about it. At the time of recording, we're about 10 subs away from hitting that 3,000 mark. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, click it, click that bell, be notified every time a new video drops, and you are going to be good to go. So it's really obvious to me as to what Daniel would bring to the Suns. His stats from this year may not be the highest of all time, but it's so clear that he and Will Powell on the opposite halfback flanks would bring that run, that drive, that meters gained that Gold Coast clearly want. They want to be in the contest and around the ball in stoppage, but they also want to bring some electric pace and good ball use from their back half. It is clear that having guys like Jack Lukosius down in that back line is hopefully to the betterment of the Suns, but I think we can all agree that Jack Lukosius is just a better player the closer he is to the offensive side of the goals for the Suns than he is the defensive side. Darcy McPherson has had a go down there. Alex Sexton has played some footy down there. Sexton's been pretty good. McPherson's had a couple of good games here or there, especially in the back end of last year, but Rioli is an upgrade on both of those without a shadow of a doubt. The pace and drive he and Will Powell would bring would add a further dynamic. The Suns are also not a particularly good kicking team, given the fact that Touk Miller, especially in the recent game against Freo, couldn't kick a fat guy in a street fight, and also given that Matt Rowley is not really known as a prodigious kick either. They are also going to need those silky ball skills, and coming out of the back half, that certainly helps. Rioli himself, alongside Jaden Short, really did tear up opposition offensive chains, or even having them on the back foot, because when Richmond had the ball in hand, obviously the opposition would be wanting to get the ball back on turnover. They weren't able to do that, hence why Richmond had so much success throughout their premiership years. Rioli to the Suns is a net positive for the Suns. Another reason for the Suns as to why the 2 first-round draft picks is not a big deal is effectively nothing changes. What do I mean by this? Well, they got pick 20 from North for a couple of reasons, and the main one was to trade it in order to either get a player now or get more picks for next year. And I'll explain why that's the case in a minute. But Gold Coast right now have got pick 7 and pick 8. Now, they're not going to be the 2 picks they give for Daniel Rioli, or at least I hope not. But pick 7 and pick 20, now, I believe that they'll offer pick 8 and pick 20. Richmond will say no, they'll want the better of those 2 picks, which makes perfect sense. Gold Coast have got an academy kid in the top 10 of this draft, Leonardo Lombard, and it looks like you are going to need to sacrifice a pick in the round of which you are matching an academy bid. So if Leonardo Lombard is a first round selection, someone bids on him in the first round, Gold Coast will need to, at the very least, give up a first round pick. Well, they've already got that because they did a deal with the Bulldogs that helped the Dogs land Riley Sanders in last year's draft by giving up their future first, which is the first in this draft. So as it stands right now, Gold Coast have pick 7, pick 8, and pick 20. And I know that even though they're giving up 2 first round picks, they are effectively giving up however many you think. Because if Lombard goes before that pick 7 mark, they would probably have to sacrifice that pick 7 anyway. Now, with the 20% discount, whether that sticks around or not, but let's say it does, for example, you're probably only giving that pick up. I don't think Lombard goes in a bid for the first 2 or 3 selections, even though mathematically pick 7 should be enough there anyway. So one of those gets absorbed with the Lombard bid no matter what. So Gold Coast would still have, in this scenario, pick 8 and pick 20. Now, Is pick 8 and pick 20 enough for Daniel Rioli? Well, again, it doesn't really matter. Gold Coast don't have a lot of list needs at this point in time. If they can learn to win on the road, they're fine. But their midfield's fine. They've just re-signed Ned Moyle, so their ruck stocks are pretty good. They're going to be confident in keeping Ben King. Jed Walter is still young, as we know, first-year player here. They don't need a whole lot in terms of top-up. And also, Gold Coast are going to be working hard to get more picks in the 2025 draft because they've got 3, if not 4, first-round types coming through their academy in that draft. And if they are going to need to get first-round picks in to match these bids, the time to deal with Gold Coast for their own players is going to be next year. But the time for Gold Coast to poach is now. They're going to get Leonardo Lombard no matter what. So if you're asking Gold Coast, would you rather have Leonardo and Daniel Rioli or Leonardo and 2 first-round picks that are pretty much unnecessary because you're going to need to trade them into the first round of 2025 in order to match bids for players? Why wouldn't you give them away? Yes, it's going to help Richmond in the long run, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But as far as Dimmer knows, his side, his trajectory is going upwards. Gold Coast do not want to be worse than they are right now, and they're not even that bad right now. They win everything at home, they don't win anything on the road, and they want the gap away from home, I should say, to just rise a little bit. That makes perfect sense. What do they need pick 20 for, at the very least? Not a lot. So, pick 20... effectively for them, is free. Is steak knives. So, with that logic, pick 8 for Daniel Rioli. Well, it's going to be pick 7. But pick 7, pick 8 for Daniel Rioli. That's overs, but it's all they can do. The pick 20 for Richmond is gravy, and that is why a lot of fans, rightly so, are saying things like, if that's the offer, drive him to the airport. And I'm totally with you, because the win for Richmond is extraordinary. But I don't want anyone to get this confused. This is not a net loss for Gold Coast either. He will make them better as they lurch towards their premiership tilt. Whether they make it to win a flag is hard to know. We don't know the future, right? That's why we have so much fun with predictions. But in order to make them better, Daniel Rioli, instead of a pick that was effectively free and a top 10 selection, is perfectly fine. There is no Daniel Rioli type in the top 10 of this draft that Gold Coast would pick up. They definitely don't need another midfielder, considering they got Jake Rogers from their academy last year. They're going to get Leonardo Lombard in their academy this year. They're going to get midfielders in the academy draft of 2025. What the hell do they need out of a very midfield top-heavy draft pool? They don't. This makes perfect sense. He makes them better for draft capital reasons. It makes sense. And they're probably going to get more picks in with things like getting rid of Jack Lukosius to Adelaide. They might get a first-round pick there. They might then on-sell that pick to someone else in order to get a first-round pick in 2025. Therefore, they'll be able to sacrifice that pick to get one of their academy kids in. It will work. This is not the only move that Gold Coast will make, but in terms of them on-field, they get better, and they can use other moves to manipulate themselves into a good position for the 2025 draft. Cool? Awesome. Tick. Gold Coast. Now, Richmond. Now, Richmond fans, you'll already know how good this is for you, right? And that is perfectly fine with me. Here's the danger for opposition fans when it comes to what Richmond can do here. Now, spoiler alert for any mock drafts that I do in the future, and I've already recorded my one for June. And I'm going to put a warning in that video again that all of the Gold Coast talk in that mock draft video will not exist around the Daniel Rioli thing because it was recorded before this. So just keep that in mind if you watch this, and then tomorrow, I think I'm going to put it out tomorrow, the mock draft. So just keep that in mind. But for the Tigers, they're taking Jagger Smith, whether they have pick 1 or pick 2. I think Josh Smiley is just such a perfect fit for North, and Jagger is such a perfect fit for Richmond. I can't see myself until someone involved at those footy clubs or a draft source I trust tells me, does on my life, Richmond are taking Smiley. They are going to be taking Jagger, and I love the move for the Tigers. Now, whether they get rid of Daniel Rioli or not, that for me is set in stone. So, Jagger Smith to the Tigers, awesome. Now, what can they do with pick 7 and pick 20, I hear you ask? Well, it looks like it's going to be another stacked draft haul for the Tigers, because if this trade did go through, they would have picks 2 at this point in time. 2, 7, 20, 22 and 34, which is an amazing start. And going into the 2021 draft, I think it was, they had 5 selections in the top 30. Now, in terms of the hole that Daniel Rioli leaves, if we talk about who is already on the list, Tom Brown, Sam Banks, these guys are going to be able to take over that role. And considering Adam Uze wants to play a more kick-friendly game, rightly or wrongly, it is his game style and we need to give it time. Of course we do. That makes sense. Tom Brown is an unbelievable kick, and I really like what Sam Banks has been able to do throughout the start of his AFL career in one-on-ones. So I don't think that is a bad prospect at all. But if you talk about what they could do, now at pick 2, as we say, or 1, but Jagger Smith is just about locked in. What could they do at 7? Well, Dylan Grimes has just had back surgery, so could they go down the key defender path and take either Harry O'Farrell or Jack Whitlock at that spot? Because as I said, there is no rebounding defender that is worth that pick. Jagger is already a midfielder. Do they go double midfielder at this point? Could they do Sam Layla, Tom Gross? Could they wait for someone like Sid Draper? Could he fall that far in the draft? It is highly unlikely, and part of it would be dependent on what Hawthorn do if the draft order stayed exactly the same. Would be really cool, I should say, to see what Hawthorn would do there. But could someone like that fall? Christian Moraes? Could you get Jagger and Christian together, which would be a lethal combination? Could you go the tall forward path and take Jack Whitlock at that point? Jacob Kazitsky hasn't really come through yet. Tom Lynch is 32 and continually gets injured. Could they get started on a pure key forward in order to get that job done? Potentially, but a lot of options there. I personally think if Richmond did get this pick, they would need to go tall. And personally, yes, Tyler Young and these guys have been pretty good down back. I like Harry O'Farrell a lot in this draft. He would be the guy that I would go and get at that spot, but I would totally understand getting either of the Whitlock brothers at that point in time. Or, if they really wanted to go sort of funky, could they take a reach on a small forward and go get Joe Berry from the Bendigo Pioneers, who would really suit their forward half game, could be someone they could get around. Seth Campbell, as kind of a 1-2 punch, would be really good. I'm kind of off the Noah Cumberland train here. He could be another option at that point. And then you ask yourself, what do you do at 20? And again, that would probably depend on what they do at 7. So if they take a tall at 7, what do they do at 20? Again, a multitude of options. You could just go with best talent available. Of course you could. If they took, say, Jack Whitlock and they went tall forward, could they go tall defender and grab Dandenong Stingrays' Noah Mraz at that point? So you've got your raw key defender, your raw key forward, you've got Jagger for your midfield. Start there, Adam Uze, there's your benchmark. You could effectively there do what Hawthorn did in 2004 and try to build through your spine. Highly unlikely they're going to get the quality of talent that Hawthorn did, but the logic can still be sound. Execution is going to be different. Of course it is. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but the logic can still be really sound there. At 22, or 20 and 22, you could kind of say to yourself, well, do we want someone who can intercept another halfback flanker, maybe who could develop and fill that void? Well, you might be looking at a Toby Travalia there, who has been playing some really good footy. That would be a really exciting fit there. I think that they are going to go out of those 4 picks, a defender or a smallish player last. Jagger is by no means small in terms of stature and what he does in terms of the footy. His height may seem like he's shorter than he actually is. He does not play like a small footballer. The 2 talls there, Travalia at 22 would work really, really well. They could go another midfielder there. There are still going to be plenty of good ones on the board. Zach Johnson could be a guy to look at. WA's Luke Urquhart would be really good to look at there. You've got Archer Day Wicks, who is going to be around that mark. Harvey Langford, Cooper Hines is going to be really good. Could they go really out of the box and take a Taj Stanley at that point? The options are incredible. And then at 34... the choice is yours. Best talent available. The position does not matter. But at 34, whoever you deem is the best on the board, go with that guy. Even if 3 out of the 5 blokes you draft are midfielders, hypothetically, which I hope they don't do that, but even if it was, that's fine. Richmond need quality talent rather than positional needs at this point. They're second last. Go and get the best talent you can. Tyler Sonsie, I'm really sorry, hasn't produced in the way I think fans would. I copped so much shit from Hawthorn fans by going, just cool your brakes on Tyler. People wanted him in the top 5 of that draft that he went. And I did kind of chill, and I'm not saying I'm right or Tyler is a bad footballer. By no means am I saying that. But are Richmond fans totally happy with Tyler? I don't think so. Part of that is he's being played out of position, which is absolutely not his fault. But if you're drafting pure midfielders, play them in there. Dusty's not going to be around forever. Dion Presti is in his 30s and he has body like tissue paper. So, can you surround Taranto and maybe Hopper, who, by the way, is still injury prone, with some younger mids? You've still got Kane McAuliffe, who you drafted last year, and I can love, by the way. If you put at least 2 more mids in that core, you're going beautifully. But in my opinion, and we're going to take pick 34 just off the board here for a minute, the ideal draft haul that Richmond could get with their 4 picks, if everything went perfectly, would be Jagger Smith first, use Gold Coast's pick on a tall, and in my opinion, that should be tall defender, first of all. So we got Jagger Smith first. We would then go with Harry O'Farrell or Matt Whitlock, depending on which one you like more. I'm an O'Farrell fan. I love a back shoulder defender. So Harry O, I'm going to put in there. Then with your pick 20, you've got a multitude of choices. Like we say, Toby Travalia could work really well. We could slot him in there as your halfback flanker. And then at 22, again, you've got a multitude of options. You've got those midfielders we mentioned. Johnson, Langford, Hines, these kind of guys. Could Tom Gross slip down that order? Absolutely he could. Or could you still sneak up and take a reach on a tall forward? Charlie Nichols from South Australia could be the guy. You could walk out of this draft post Daniel Rioli with an ultra good mid, a key defender, a key forward, and a halfback flanker. Or you would walk out of this draft with pick 2 and pick 22. In my mind, Richmond need to take this deal and run with it. In my mind, Gold Coast are not sacrificing a whole lot by doing this deal on paper. Daniel still got good footy in him by every stretch. There is no metric that you can tell me that it tells me that Gold Coast or Richmond is stuffing up by doing this deal. So well done, Dimmer. You're looking after your new and your old club, which is extraordinary. He'll also know what Daniel can do. I do not see him going back to being a small forward now that he is a perennial and, in my opinion, very good halfback flanker, and would join a defense where he doesn't need to be the best player. He doesn't even need to be the best halfback flanker, because Will Powell, in my opinion, is a star, and as long as he recovers from his slip-up and becomes a better human being for it, we're golden. But Richmond, 4 picks inside the top 22. 5 picks inside the top 35. You'd be crazy not to. Gold Coast, go get yourself the extra speed that you require and do other moves that help you get the draft haul that you need. Both of these football clubs, get it done. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. Click the like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. You have yourselves an amazing day. The June version of the mock draft comes out, and I know versus this video it's going to look messy because Gold Coast retain all their picks. Just work with me, guys. I would appreciate that in a massive way. You have yourself a wonderful evening. It's Thursday night and there's no footy, which absolutely sucks, but look after yourselves. You deserve it. I'll see you tomorrow.